Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the 15th Annual Moccasin Bend Lecture Series. I'm Tricia Mims, the Executive Director of National Park Partners for Chickamauga and Chattanooga National Military Park, including Moccasin Bend National Archaeological District. On behalf of our Board of Directors, thank you for joining us today. In the 15-year history of this series, we've only ever had to cancel one show when the effects of Hurricane Irma shut down the city of Chattanooga in September of 2017 on the very day of the lecture. Zoom was not part of our everyday vocabulary back then, but this year we are grateful to have the technology to be able to broadcast to anywhere from anywhere, and we want to give a special thanks to Helm Projects for producing our series in this virtual platform. Locally, your Chickamauga and Chattanooga National Military Park is a natural, historic, and cultural resource, and National Park Partners preserves and promotes the stories of these national treasures. We work closely with the National Park Service, led by Superintendent Brad Bennett, to develop projects and programs that emphasize our core belief that everyone belongs in the park and the park belongs to everyone. To that end, National Park Partners just launched our Forever Moccasin Bend campaign to create a welcoming entrance befitting the country's only national archaeological district. Over 90% of the funding has already been identified that will create a parking area with restrooms, an interpretive display with an overview of Moccasin Bend history and an orientation to the trails at the property, as well as an accessible walkway and a covered pavilion for National Park Rangers, tribal leaders, and others to continue to share the legacy and history of Moccasin Bend with locals and visitors alike. Please visit forevermoccasinbend.org to learn how you can get involved in our campaign and make a difference that will last forever. The Moccasin Bend Lecture Series began in 2006 thanks to the generous underwriting of local businessman and conservationist Mr. Greg Vital. Greg has been a longtime supporter of the Friends of Moccasin Bend and the Friends of Chickamauga and Chattanooga National Military Park, now combined into National Park Partners, and in 2008 was the recipient of our Drew Haskins Jr. Award of Merit, in addition to many other awards and honors. Greg is the recent past president of the National Parks Conservation Association and has visited over 360 of the 421 national park sites in the country. Truly an amazing achievement. Here's a message from Greg to welcome you in his own words.
Welcome to Lookout Mountain, and more importantly, the 15th Annual Moccasin Bend Lecture Series. I'm Greg Vital, a proud member of the National Park Partners Board and lifelong supporter of national parks and land conservation. In 2005, the late Shelley Andrews, Becky Browder, and myself were sitting in 212 Market Street discussing the importance of introducing the Chattanooga community to the newly created Moccasin Bend Archaeological District as a new unit of Chickamauga-Chattanooga National Military Park. There, the idea of the annual lecture series was born. Moccasin Bend is unique in its original legislation as the nation's first archaeological district. It tells the story and protects a 10,000-year history of Native American peoples living on the Bend. It protects important Civil War earthworks during the Chattanooga campaign, parts of the Trail of Tears, and the original Federal Road, along with evidence of the early industrialization of Chattanooga. The Bend also features natural areas for trails and paths and wildlife habitat, all for the benefit and enjoyment of all visitors, protected by the staff of the National Park Service. So as the concept of the lecture series evolved, 3 guest speakers a year, starting in 2006, each fall, covering a variety of subjects. Now, 15 years later and 40 speakers, I'm proud to continue to underwrite this annual event for the enjoyment of all who love national parks and our National Military Park. Some of those speakers were authors, musicians, historians, a former Secretary of the Interior, 2 directors of the National Park Service, including the first African American director and the first woman director of the National Park Service, Principal Chief of both the Cherokee Nations, Eastern Band, and the Cherokee Nation in Oklahoma. We have met at the Tennessee Aquarium, Camp House, Bessie Smith Hall, UTC, Reflection Riding, and the IMAX, and now virtually. Now for a short moment of personal preference. I want to recognize my 91-year-old mother, Rita Vital, who many of you know, who in 15 years never missed a lecture series presentation, and today is also joining us by Zoom. Welcome, Mom. Although we all would love to be together as we annually have done, we will carry on that tradition someday in the future. So as we continue this great legacy of supporting the Bend, as well as Chickamauga-Chattanooga National Military Park, let's all enjoy this virtual event and reminisce about great times we spent in a national park. Again, welcome, and here's to another 15 years.
Thanks so much, Greg. We are so grateful for your ongoing support of the lecture series and of National Park Partners. And I want to give a special thank you to the University of Tennessee at Chattanooga History Department for helping sponsor today's lecture on The Passage, Ancient Cherokee Art Meets the 21st Century Waterfront. Before I introduce our speakers, just a quick note of housekeeping. If you have any questions, please feel free to enter them into the chat feature, and we'll have time to get to your questions at the end of the program. Bill Glass is a Cherokee Nation tribal member residing in Tahlequah, Oklahoma. He studied ceramics at Central State University in Oklahoma and ceramics and sculpture at the Institute of American Indian Arts in Santa Fe, New Mexico. In addition to his work creating The Passage, Bill's commissioned work includes installations at the American Indian Culture Center and Museum in Oklahoma City, the BOK Events Arena in Tulsa, Oklahoma, and the Cherokee Capitol Museum in Tahlequah. His work is displayed in many collections around the country, including the Smithsonian National Museum of the American Indian in Washington, D.C. Bill has received many recognitions and honors throughout his career, most notably receiving the Cherokee Medal of Honor and being named a Living Treasure Artist by the Cherokee Nation. Bill's son, Demas Glass, resides in Tahlequah as well. He attended Southern Illinois University in Edwardsville, Illinois, on a wrestling scholarship and majored in fine arts. As a metalsmith, Demas produces mixed media sculptures, decorative containers, and jewelry, and uses sterling silver and other non-ferrous metals, steel, stainless steel, wood, shell, clay, and stone. Demas is the co-owner and head of metal fabrication at Glass Studio and has won many awards and recognitions, including the high honor of being named a Cherokee National Treasure in 2016. Ken Foster is a Cherokee National Tribal member and serves as a Special Projects Manager for the Cherokee National Historical Society. He attended Oklahoma State University and Northeast State College in Tahlequah. His training as an artist came from studying with Bill Glass and other practicing artists. Ken works in a variety of media but specializes in pottery, and in 2005 won the Merit Award at the Okmulgee Art Show. He designed the Forward Journey Destinations disc at The Passage and also served as project linguist, translating interpretive panels and signage into Cherokee. Ann Coulter has had a long career in helping plan the future of communities and city sectors. Much of that work has been in her hometown of Chattanooga, Tennessee. At River City Company starting in 2000, she worked on Chattanooga's 21st Century Waterfront Plan, including its public art component, highlighted by the creation of The Passage. Ann has a master's degree from the University of Missouri and spent a year as a Loeb Fellow at the Harvard Graduate School of Design in 2004. Mary Barnett's career began in the epicenter of the entertainment and media world of New York City, working with such legacy giants as the Virgin Records artist label, WHTZ Z100 FM, and MTV Networks. After moving to the South, Mary continues to find dynamic roles in the city of Chattanooga, crafting narratives and producing projects for arts, media, and cultural institutions such as the Chattanooga Public Library, Bluffview Art District, and Glass House Collective. She has worked locally for broadcast and online news organizations as editor and writer and is currently the Programs and Projects Manager for National Park Partners. Her independent documentary work includes One Road, the story of The Passage, a film she and Ann produced together in 2007.
Because as we actually talked, it became clear the idea that it's not about memorial, it's not about the past, it's also about celebrating the culture and looking forward to the future as well.
Thus began a new journey, a journey of return that ended with the most significant public installation of contemporary southeastern Native American art on the continent. Mounted on the walls and the floor of the passage, the artwork consists of 7 hand-carved, glazed ceramic discs that are 6 feet in diameter, and 16 stainless steel figurative cutouts ranging from 1 to 13 feet in height. The discs are inspired by shell carvings excavated from mounds attributed to the area's prehistoric Mississippian-era culture. Monumental stainless steel stickball players play a traditional game around a ceremonial pole and are trailed by 7 stars of the Pleiades constellation. A steel water spider helps tell an ancient Cherokee myth.
We began planning the 21st century waterfront 20 years ago this month. And we very quickly realized that we had the opportunity to change Ross's Landing from basically a rip-rap edged parking lot to something that could be pretty incredible for our city. At the urging of a young TVA resource officer, we researched the history of Ross's Landing, we performed archaeological studies, and we consulted a number of experts around the nation and lots of stakeholders about how to properly and authentically interpret the history and the importance of this place. Ross's Landing was the birthplace of our city at a Native American trading post, and unfortunately, greatly misfortunately, a few years later, a major point of debarkation for thousands of Native Americans forcibly removed on the Trail of Tears. As you can imagine, we got a lot of advice about what we should do there, but the advice that we followed was that we received from cultural representatives from the tribes in the Eastern Band in North Carolina and the Cherokee Nation in Oklahoma. And their message was clear and compelling, and it just felt right to do it this way. And that was that we should tell the story that celebrated the strong, the vibrant, and the resilient culture of the Cherokee people and other southeastern Native American tribes that were forced from the Tennessee River landscape. As Richard Allen, who at that time was the cultural officer for the Cherokee Nation, told us, as horrible as the Trail of Tears was, it did not define who the Cherokee people were. Well, the city had allocated 1% of the total waterfront budget for public art, so we issued a national request for proposals for artists to interpret the history of a completely new public space that would directly connect Market Street with the Tennessee River. How to do that was left completely up to the artists, but we did require Cherokee participation on the team. When a team of talented artists emerged from Oklahoma, all members of the Cherokee Nation, we began to feel that some kind of destiny was going to guide the work that there was to do here. None of the artists on the team that we selected, Team Gadoogie, had worked on a project of this magnitude before, and they'd never worked together as an artist team. The timetable was very tight, and of course there's never enough money in the budget. But what Team Gadoogie, led by Bill Glass, was able to do was to return the spirit of the southeastern Native American cultures to a place that had ruthlessly expelled them over 150 years before. The passage has received national attention for the beauty of the art installed there and for the interpretation of the space that it allows. And the passage is known for something else as well. How a city may go about uncovering important and even brutal parts of its past while creating new hope, understanding, and lessons for its future. To hear more from the artists Bill Glass, Demas Glass, and Ken Foster about this, here's Mary Barnett.
Awesome. What a great place to begin, and feels so good to be back together with our friends in Oklahoma. Hello, Demas, Bill, and Ken.
Morning.
I'm going to ask you guys to just go down the line there and introduce yourselves to our audience. Tell us who you are, what you're doing, and your role on the Passage project specifically.
My name is Demas Glass, Native American artist. Went to Southern Illinois, came back and started collaborating with my father. We got this opportunity. I headed the metal fabrication studio in the project.
Bill Glass. I'm a contemporary Southeast ceramist, and we did all the work here at Demas in my studio. Here, we live in Locust Grove, Oklahoma. So this is where we have our shop, and we had just recently enlarged the facility to actually be large enough to take on projects like this. So fortunately, without the facility, it would have been probably impossible for us to do it. So I was the guy who sculpted all the ceramic discs.
Wonderful.
Yo, my name's Ken Foster. Hello. I work for the Cherokee National Historical Society, Tahlequah, Park Hill. I'm a special projects officer there, and I do just about whatever's needed to be done. I do painting and traditional pottery, and since the project, I've been doing traditional art and working with American Indian Resource Center, teaching blowguns, and I've been awarded Traditions Keeper with the United Kituah Band of Cherokees in Oklahoma, and I'm part of the Language or Cherokee Speakers Bureau, which the Cherokee Nation has taken all the speakers and put them on a list, and I'm a part of that. I've been working with the Heritage Center doing classes in language, traditional stuff, teaching kids clay work, painting, stuff like this since all this has happened. But mostly I've been just working at the Heritage Center and we have kids out there that come from all the 14 counties. There's times we have some days we had 1,000 kids that we work with. The next day we might have 1,200 kids that we work with, teaching them different things. So it's been a busy time.
Wonderful. That's wonderful. So, and what a great place to start our conversation about the passage. And we've got a lot to talk about, or we hope to get to a lot of things, including what you guys are up to now and seeing some of your newer work and telling us what it is, this piece behind you as well. But let's start off with the passage. And I wanted to take a moment to read a piece of your artist statement from 2005 about the work. And we can maybe roll some footage, some of that beauty footage from the grand opening as featured in the documentary One Road, P.S. And then come back to you guys and talk about your intentions when you were setting out to create this magnificent work. So here's what you wrote back in 2005. Quote, "To truly honor the memories of our ancestors, past and present, we felt it necessary to create a contemporary public art that expresses true cultural relevance and establishes an aesthetic that inspires an appreciation of Chattanooga's artistic past, with narrative insight from an indigenous perspective. It is our team's honor and privilege to complete the circle begun by our ancestors so many years ago by bringing back to this area the vitality and visual strength of our Cherokee forefathers' artwork. Through this art installation, we feel as though we are symbolically returning to our ancestral homeland." Bill, you want to talk a little bit about what you guys were thinking and feeling back then when that was written and you were creating this work?
Well, like Ann said, the first thing was to assemble a team. So Nagofty Scott, he's a shell carver. He was a shell carver, and he'd been working with these motifs for a long time. So I got him. He lived down the road. I used him as my researcher. And then seeing how we had the idea was to attach ceramics to metal, which really, if you look across other, I don't care if it's Indian, white, black, any other, there's not very many people that are probably attaching ceramics to metal. So that was a challenge in itself. We thought we could do it, So
you did it.
There
you did
we
it.
go.
You actually did it.
Yeah. And to scale it up to the size that we did, that was bigger than I've ever done before. So the challenge was on. And
there were a lot of firsts on this project.
Yeah, really. And it's held up good. That's what I like about it too. It's held up. So like the statement said, we were trying to show that the Indian people at that time, these were research from the old designs, so we were returning the original. Well, where more people could be informed about it, really. That these kind of designs are part of our prehistory, and that's what we wanted to do.
Well, and you definitely, in that process, through wanting to bring those designs forward and work with each other, and you assembled a multidisciplinary team. I mean, probably any of you individually could have gone for that RFQ yourselves. And you happen to have expanded your studio around that same time, and were kind of, built for it, right? Meant to be in that way. But you assembled this multidisciplinary team, but you and Demas had already been working together, because he brought in the industrial arts and was pushing some of you. But let's talk about some of those firsts. You'd never worked together before. You'd never worked on anything of this scale before, let alone, how many miles away from your home for weeks at a time, sometimes commuting from Locust Grove to Chattanooga over an 8-month period, off and on, and really pulling this off. What was that like, to work through some of those challenges and fears and unknowns and get to the other side to produce something so monumental and significant? Demas, I see you moving a little bit.
Well, there's that's part of the creative process. There are plenty of obstacles to overcome throughout the whole process, from beginning to the end of a project and an art piece in general. That's one of the things that people just, I never could understand. They don't really realize that how many obstacles there are. It's truly a labor of love, and once you begin to overcome a small obstacle, another one will present itself, and so along the process, you learn more about the symbol that you're creating. You learn more about yourself, but those kind of things are a natural part of creativity, overall, and that's really where what excites artists and creates all the anxieties that they might have, and then they also keep coming back for more whenever they feel the accomplishments once it's all said and done.
Creative tension, use it, right?
Yeah.
Use it. I've also heard the phrase of art is working with mistakes. Just accept it. And mistakes not in a bad way, but like challenges. Oh, that didn't work. Try again. Fail a lot, but Go ahead, Bill.
I need to mention the rest of my team members.
Absolutely.
Gary Allen, he is Cherokee and Navajo. He lives in Tulsa. He's a painter and a ceramist. And Demas, Ken, me, And Robbie McMurtry, he's a Comanche, Cherokee.
Yeah.
So
Thank you.
all these guys, and the Gulfie Scott, he's a Creek, Cherokee Creek. And so all these guys were just a big integral part of the, final thing. They got to draw and design. Some got to draw and design the disc, and Robbie did the stickball players. And Demas did the water spider and the reflecting pool. So all of these guys had integral parts in the whole thing. So that was the whole team.
Thank you, Bill. How about we talk a little bit about the language arts with Ken, and then Bill, maybe tell us a little bit more about the research that you and Nagufti that Nagufti was sharing with you, and I think you may have brought something today. But I mean, let's talk about Ken, your process to bring in the language arts and some of those conversations that you said you had with others about the way things are said and pronounced and interpreted, some of the symbols. How was that process for you?
Okay, once the designs were identified and given a name, what I did, I contacted some fellow Cherokee speakers in and around the area, and one of those was Durbin Feeling, who was he's a national treasurer. He just passed a few weeks ago.
Excuse me,
author of
Justin, let's pull up some of Ken's drawing. Yeah, there you go. Sorry, Ken, go ahead.
That's fine. I worked with Durbin Feeling, my father, William Foster, and Dennis Sixkiller mainly, and Anna Huckabee. And what we do, we talk, and I talk to each individual and get the best interpretation. And since the Cherokee language is more of a descriptive language, there weren't certain words for like coiled serpent. So we had to come up with the best definition. And Ukoyahna means like, it's not coiled, but it means like it's wrapped or covered. So it's mainly like it's wrapped serpent. So, and it's not, there's not a word really for serpent. And what it's saying is like a snake. So we had to get that all done through the different interpretations. So I utilized Durbin, Dennis, who's still living, and my dad, who passed. But I try to incorporate all the different interpretations and get those people identified.
Can you tell me what we're looking at here? Go back to that image there. Can you tell me?
That's Unilosa. It means passage.
No, here. Do you see the one that you sent me over the weekend?
Right. That's the very one that looks like a GWI. That's Cherokee, Jaligi, and there's one that says Une Jota, which is stickball. The other is Unilosa. Unilosa. He's that's the passage. And then you have those connections are in there. And that one would be Dudlosa. That looks like an S, like a swirly J and an R.
I see it.
And
yes.
that means that's the connections design. So
that was yours, right?
No, mine was the
yours was
black
Journey.
and gold. I can't remember the name of it, but it's we had to take those. There's not really a word for connections. It means Dudlosa means like where they crossed, where they intersected type. So we had to do all that and break it down basically phonetically to mean as close as we can get to the interpretation. So it was pretty. It took a little while sometimes, and then when we did the disc and did the interpretations on the plaques, we did all that too, to translate those. So through various people, we had Kevin Daugherty, who was working with the geodata with the Cherokee Nation. He's the one that helped lay out all the plaques on their platter, and there with the Cherokee Nation, he helped do that. So we had to incorporate a lot of different people just to get where we wanted to refine everything. So, but all the translations was a little time consuming.
We're live. It's all
Sorry
good.
about that.
I'm glad it wasn't mine. That's.
But that was part of our translating the language, and then we had to come up with the phonetics, taking the phonetics down and then giving the syllabary. So that was done through the different people on
No
the
small
language.
job. No small job at all.
It was kind of difficult at times because there's like I said, Cherokee is a descriptive language. There was no certain word for like connections. We didn't know connections back then. There's no verbs, no adverbs and stuff like that. It was it's a language that's spoken. So it was, but nowadays we have, Cherokee Nation does have a language department where they break down the language and tells you how the words are used anymore. So it's an ongoing process. So, but yeah, it was fun. I enjoyed it. I got to meet a lot of people just through that.
Yeah.
And it was interesting to break down the language.
Wonderful. And Bill, what do you want to add there about some of the research that you guys were looking at at the shell carvings and some of the designs you wanted to bring forward and incorporate, but evolve?
I never saw Demas move that fast before, so.
Did you get a little whiplash?
Okay, yeah, I wanna read something from my friend Nagofti Scott. This is what he wrote on the significance of the timeline. For 1,000 years, 800 AD to 1800s, a culturally vibrant art form was produced in the Chattanooga area in Hamilton County, Tennessee. Shell art did not end with the close of the Mississippian period, but continued into proto-historic and historic periods of Cherokee culture. Three major proto-historic archaeological provinces flourished near present-day Chattanooga: Hickson, Dallas, and Sitico. Pre-proto-historic Chattanooga area is considered by Southeast archaeologists to be the Southeast epicenter for shell art production. Prehistoric Mississippian period began around 800 AD with introduction and first civilization of corn from Mesoamerica, and ended in early 1500s with DeSoto's arrival in 1540. Proto-historic period 1500 to 1700, Sitico province at present-day Chattanooga was stronghold of traditionalism. The continued use of shell art by proto-historic Sitico culture and historic Cherokees 700 to 1800s were attempts by traditional revivalists to return to ancient customs and ceremonial practices that would stop heritage loss and end epidemics, and introduced by early European contact. Early historic period began in 1700, and in 1783, Dragging Canoe and his followers moved down Tennessee River to Chickamauga, near present-day Chattanooga. The Chickamauga Cherokees were making weeping eye masks after Revolutionary War until early 1800s to honor Falcon, spirit of fallen warriors who sacrificed against American expansionism, colonialism, earned the shell burial mask of the highest honor. These shell masks were the last shell works produced by descendants of prehistoric Mississippian cultures prior to removal in 1838 and 39. Shell art was not produced again by the Cherokees until 1970s.
Wow.
So that was really Nagofty was good. He was really good. He was a good researcher, and seeing how he was a shell carver. And then the idea was just to get some of these particular designs that were close to the vicinity of Chattanooga that could fit into this timeline. That was the basis. And we did it in a contemporary format. You know, I used clay and glazes so it could withstand the elements.
Yeah.
And I had the guys, Ken got 1 plaque, but the other guys got 2 each, made 7. And they drew, designed them, and then I had to sculpt them and make them. And they helped me as helpers to finish them up. And Demas did the rings, and we mounted them into the rings we started using industrial type applications, though, like they would use on skyscrapers for the glues and caulking compounds and stuff that we use. So we did we brought it up to date with the materials.
Can we roll some of that footage?
That was kind of the process.
Yeah. See, we're showing some clips again of just the scale and the no joke. You built that. What do you call that? Hoist, didn't you?
Yeah. We had a friend that designed the way to hang it. He's a welder guy that works around here. He's an expert welder, and he figured up iron worker, and he figured out the rig, how we could do it, slide in, and everything worked good.
Yeah, keep that rolling if it's long enough, Justin. Just that's out in Oklahoma. Well, let's talk a little bit about you and Demas. It's kind of extraordinary to me when you think about it, the fact that you two happen to be father and son, but you decided a long time ago to stay together, work together as artists, and to combine your talents. And it's as a result of that, and that collision space that you guys created in your studio where you could try different methods, that you were both able to advance as artists, and you were able to impact the evolution of the art form for your culture. And like you said at the top, there's not a lot of folks working in ceramic and steel as a combination. But then you two in particular, the fact that you're father and son and share a studio and are just, in each other's business all the time and know each other so well, I don't know, that's just a very special recipe of trust and support and everything, and you've obviously been able to push each other and push the art form. Talk a little bit about that.
Well, Demas was a wrestler, and when he was young, I tried to keep him out here in my studio as much as I could. I kept him around even when he was starting in kindergarten, and I was hoping it'd work out this way, but I wasn't sure, I was pushing him that direction, but I couldn't tell. And then I ended up coaching him to Oklahoma State title as a coach in high school.
You coached him?
Then he went off to college, and he on a wrestling scholarship, and then he came back, and he decided that he was going to be an artist. So he can talk a little bit more from there on.
Oh, and let's look at some of let's pull up Upper Realm and Sun Circle, Phoenix Rising, and then we'll talk a little about specifically about A Touch to Above and some of those others. But go ahead, Demas.
Yeah, well, those early teamwork that we put in did help to mold a lot of what we do now. I mean, we got into being a pretty good efficient team whenever I was in grade school, you know, and that's always something that we just kept as a team. We sometimes there's frustrations, but the ultimate idea is just task at hand and continue on trying to build upon struggles, and so that was the whole underlying positive that I learned growing up early on, and it didn't much matter if it was fixing a car that needed brake pads put on it or whatever it was. We just there was a sense of quality, the amount of quality that needed to be done. You know, brakes are pretty important. If you got to put them on, you better put them on right. You know, and there's certain things that we certain challenges that we did all along that led to just being working together and getting things accomplished and make sure that it was done as good as we could do them. And that was the whole thing that I learned throughout my childhood and being raised here in Locust Grove.
Sounds like a great work ethic that is obvious in your work. Demas, you've talked about being a warrior for the culture. You know, I've heard you talk also about taking primitive design and putting a contemporary spin on that, and that way, you know, everything, the culture evolves through its art forms, and that's something you guys are contributing. What do you mean when you say being a warrior for the culture?
Well, this is a nice topic. There's language, visual arts, our stories that were passed down, certain ceremonial. There's just I have to look at it in a way that it's actually you have to sacrifice. There's certain things that all those things whenever you become an advocate of that, or you start to use this as a form of cultural retention. You know, there's certain things that you have to you committed. You know, it became a mission, and then after that, there's certain sacrifices that have to be made to pass those things on and
like
create.
What? Like what?
Just it's tough. You know, it's just there's plenty of things that have to be. You know, it's just the tough sometimes. So in order to do that, you really have to stay focused on what you're trying to achieve. You know, and then at the end of all that, that's starts to be your contribution to the art history here in the United States. You know, we had our art here, and
yeah.
Then European contact and contact in general came, and I just want to make sure that people know that our arts is one of the greatest and most striking art forms as far as line quality, and it's still being pushed and represented to different contemporary methods, and that's become a mission-driven process that I feel like is starting to be,
recognized,
starting to become
more appreciated.
Yeah, recognized and appreciated. And
that's awesome. Bill, do you want to say anything, or Demas, about any of these pieces, A Touch to Above, or Turtle Island Migration, The Prayer Feather? We're kind of seeing those on the screen. There's Touch to.
Well,
sorry, we have the title
one
wrong
right
on
there.
that, but
I'll
yeah, let's stay on this one right here.
This call for art came out, I had an idea of this piece, and I did a thumbnail sketch, a small thumbnail sketch. I just whipped it out and I gave it to Demas, and I said, "Hey, how about this idea?" I passed it on to him, and then he got it and played around with it a little bit, and then it just blossomed. You know, it became this piece. He even built a scale model first so we could use that to put into the competition and show, and man, it just so I had an idea, and then you give it to your partner, and your partner expands your idea, and it comes out to something better than I even had envisioned. That's what, to me, is like real teamwork and partnership, is when things like that happen. You become pleasantly surprised.
That's a lot of trust and faith that and you know, just human nature between people. That doesn't just happen. And certainly between father and son, there's something that's just intrinsically there that makes that really work.
Well, too, as a ceramist, before he came along, I was limited to the size of my kiln for the size that I could produce. And once Damon could come along and build armature systems for me then I could begin to puzzle my, I could make sections of stuff and puzzle it together and do like the passage work, that's like a big puzzle. Each disc is a section, so it's put together. So I was able to expand my own, my vision got to be bigger, and my vision of things got to be larger because of Demas. I got to use my brain a little harder. So that was cool.
How's that going? That's awesome. Let's talk about making art that pushes, educates, and lasts generations. The legacy of what you're creating now. And Justin, maybe we could pull up that Benjamin Harjo Jr. quote. What Ben Harjo said about you, Bill. Bill is by far one of the most original and innovative Native artists living today. He has a deep connection with his own southeastern Cherokee heritage, but his creative designs are all on his own. His beautiful pottery and ceramic sculptures have taken Native pottery to a new plateau, and his legacy to the art world will most definitely stand the test of time. Southeastern culture comes alive with his pottery. It teaches the public and makes them aware of this fantastic culture of the people of the Mississippian period. Boom. That's at your feet right there. But you've talked about the work that you make with the intention that it's looked back on and represents you and your culture. Can you talk a bit about leaving a legacy?
Well, when you're young and first come out of art school and stuff, you're not really thinking about legacy. You're kind of thinking about surviving. Sure. As an artist. What am I going to do to survive as an artist? Because it's a hard life. It's a hard life to choose to be an artist. And I've been lucky enough to have survived 40 years. I'm been an artist, living off my artwork for 40 years now. So that's a hard road. And that was one thing I didn't know if Demas wanted to jump into that fire, but he did. So now he's committed. But and I wanted to do something. I didn't want to do work that was just Indian. I wanted to do something that related to my tribe, So that's why I wanted to approach the Southeast, because that's where we were removed from, and that's our ancient cultural background. So I wanted to bring out these old designs, and really, I think Southeast art was a little bit behind the other, behind Southwest art and behind Northeast Coast art and behind Plains art, And
what do you mean behind? Like just not as widely known?
Exposure-wise. Yeah. Exposure-wise, and really, the Southwest has been doing so much stuff for so long, like Indian market, it's like, I don't know.
Yeah.
60 or 70 year, 100 year, I don't know. It's old. And we still need more exposure to this. There's good Southeast artists out there. Everybody's starting to, catch on to it, and it's starting to develop. And
can you tell us a little bit about the piece behind you? That's something brand new that you're working on, right? Can you speak about the piece?
This one?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
And then we're gonna, and then I've been
been
told by my team here that there's a lot of demand to get the questions going. There's lots of good
Okay.
questions. But so let's talk about tell me what that is behind you, and then I think we're gonna go back to Tricia and start taking some questions if that's okay. It's 10 till 1, and we could talk for hours, obviously. But I didn't mean, let's do that. So talk about the piece behind you.
This piece is commissioned by our tribes here in the Cherokee Nation, and we're going to put it out there at the Tahlequah Casino when we get done. It's going to be similar to the one, kind of the idea along the same line as the Chattanooga stuff, a puzzle being a big old piece of ceramics set inside stainless steel. So a lot of work ahead of us, but we'll do a little bit more sculpting and carving and stuff like that. So it'll be interesting. It'll be a good challenge.
So all of that behind you will be pieces of ceramic that you've made in your studio and carved and then assembled for the whole composition.
Yes.
That's just amazing. Indeed. Well, we're going to go back to Tricia and get some questions from our audience started. You guys ready for that?
Yeah.
As ready as we'll ever be.
First, let me apologize. I was tripped over my notes there and said you all live in Tahlequah when in fact you live in Locust Grove, Oklahoma. So, mea culpa there. So, question from the audience: is there any element you would like to add to the passage now, if you could? And how is the art on the passage worn since the installation?
Yeah, there's always, as you.
I don't think we can hear Bill.
I can't hear him.
We can't.
Oh, we.
Yes. Yeah, there's, when the passage was completed in 2005, and we're always continue to research more and never stop. So there's probably a few things that I might change now, but and as far as the wearing of it, yeah, you can tell it's been there for that length of time too, and it probably could use a little bit of just maintenance and cleanup. So it's hanging though.
Indeed, it's definitely one of the most visited places in Chattanooga. People love it, and locals love it, and certainly one of the places on the list for visitors when they come to enjoy it. Another question was, how are all of the elements, discs, metalwork, the water stairs, the water coming out of the tubes related to each other?
Well, the Cherokees, in many tribes, we were always around water. Water plays a significant part of our life. We do cleansing there, of course, bathing and stuff, but water is a cleanser, and so our tribes were always surrounded by water. If you'll notice, during the mound areas, the mounds were actually built around waterways, and waterways were part of the travel that a lot of trading was done. So those trades from the south come up to the southwest, up to the southeast, to the north, was all through waterways. So water was a significant part. So the water coming down is representative of the water that we surround ourselves with. And that's where you find your mounds. That's where the discs come in. And on the north side by the river, the pyramid actually is supposed to represent a mound. And so the water cannons are 7 cannons that represent the 7 clans, but it's all indicative of water that surrounds us. So the disc there on the waterways was representative of the mounds off the riverways.
And that was those features were developed by Hargraves Associates, so that was a very nicely intertwined. That's where the actual architecture and the art became intertwined and accented one another well. That was a good positive thing that happened in that project there.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. There's lots of kudos to you all, and in fact, somebody asking or stating that it's unbelievable how you combine ceramics and steel, and hoping that someday you'll share your secrets through classes. Very impressed with your work. Several of those kind of comments that came in on the chat. And then one about the Cherokee language in and around the Chattanooga area for the different names of places, such as Chickamauga. I don't know if any of that came up in your research of things that you maybe Ken, I don't know when you were looking at some of the translations of names of the places around Chattanooga, if anything came up.
I think you're going to have some different, you're going to have some language things there, because some words are Creek words, and then you have Cherokee words that, like Tokwa and Chota. Chota is a Cherokee word, which is not right around that area, but it's around Vonore and places like that. But some of the languages are, I'm thinking Chickamauga is a Creek word. So, but Moccasin Bend, you'd have to translate the Moccasin into the Bend, and but there are some words there. Of course, back in the studies, there's different translations for Cherokee. We were Cherokee, we were Cherokee, and we're actually Jalagi, which means Cherokee, so in our language. But the Creeks had words for us too, and so did the Choctaws, Chickasaws. They had words related back. So the language would have to just be researched to see which one are directly related to Cherokee, and then find out what other words are used as far as mainly around Creek, because the Creeks and Cherokees were so close together. I'm sure they overrun after settlements, since the Cherokees were in about 5 states there.
Yeah, Chattanooga was a Creek word too.
Yeah, Chattanooga's a Creek word.
Thank you. That's there's a lot of discussion amongst Chattanoogaans trying to figure out sort of the roots. We know our history goes back a long way at Moccasin Bend in this whole area, really. One last question that came on. Well, actually, a couple more have come in just since we were talking. I think of ball sports being either First Nation or Mesoamerican. So they're talking about the stickball sculpture. What is the relationship to the metal sculptures for the Cherokee?
Well, the Cherokees and the Creeks, and all 5 tribes that we're associated with through the 5 tribes, we all have our stickball game. And Jota is what you'd say stickball, but actually it's the little brother of war. So the stickball players was representative of the stickball game, and nowadays it's more of a social game. But back in the old times, back in those days, that was the way you settled your disputes, and that's where you settled your arguments or whatever you want to call it. And it was really a bloody sport. I mean, there was a lot of physical contact and a lot of injury. And some of the stickball games would be so huge that the field was, if you were to take 5 football fields and put them together, that might be a stickball field.
Wow.
So there was a lot of different players on that. And nowadays, it's more of a social game here in our area. So the Choctaws still play. Of course, their stickball sticks are different. The Cherokee stickball sticks are different than the Choctaws. They're different than the Creeks. So, stickball's it's an ancient game. And I'm sure you probably noticed lacrosse has that was devised through stickball. So stickball is a ancient game with the Cherokees and other 5 tribes.
Thank you so much. Just briefly, we've come up on the hour. We're going to continue the discussion with our artists for a few more minutes, but if anyone had to leave right at an hour point, I want to thank you for joining us. And be sure to tune in on Sunday, the 25th. We'll have our 3rd and final installment of the lecture series with Julia Keefe. She's a Nez Perce jazz musician and has studied the relationship and the coevolution of indigenous cultures with jazz music. And we're going to have a little jazz brunch and learn on Sunday the 25th, so don't miss that. I'll go back to the questions if y'all are up for taking just a couple more. Whose idea was it to have the waterfall steps?
Hargraves.
Okay. That's quick and easy.
Yeah, you guys were like dealing with you were applying for a commission on a very defined built environment already. So a lot of things had already been decided.
Right. We had, it's so interesting to hear Demas talk about the problems that artists have to solve in a project. The artists were handed some very definite constraints in terms of the space. It could only be a certain size. When you look, it's really wedged in between the aquarium and the hillside. Above the bottom of the passage is a highway. So there were some very definite space and structural or infrastructure constraints of the space, which the artists had to work within. And then once the artist team was identified and the landscape architects were able to work directly with them, as Demas mentioned too earlier, that the creative juices started to connect between the architecture, landscape, how a space was to be designed for the art, and then how the art began to occupy the space. So that after that, it really was hand in hand how it came together.
Justin, we have a request in the chat to show the segment with the waterfall steps again. I think it's maybe the part at the very, there's some footage in there that can give a little context for folks who maybe not, there we go, not as familiar.
Yeah.
There they are.
Beautiful.
That's the ceiling under the highway. And that's a younger man.
That's Richard Allen.
Yeah, right there, pointing it out.
Yeah.
Right.
Go ahead, Mary.
I want to make sure we talk about something, Bill, you and I talked about that Anne mentioned in her opening remarks that I want to give you guys a chance to comment on specifically in terms of the experience here in Chattanooga and all those firsts and all those constraints. But ultimately, Bill, you said you guys felt so supported here, beginning with being able to be the ones that decided what the art would be and weren't told how to pursue that. But the whole experience of the art committee here in Chattanooga and the whole process of collaborating on this, you said was kind of unmatched. I don't know. What do you want to say about that?
Well, we're way over here in Oklahoma, and I live out in the woods, so my little town pretty small, and for us to get to go there and do such a project of this scale, and kind of didn't know what to expect. But once we got down there and people were so nice to us and were willing to listen to us and take our ideas and suggestions and work out problems with each other, and then support us when we got there, bring us water, and while we were working, bring us water and snacks. And I tell you one thing too that really made this happen was Peggy Townsend. She was my liaison between me and Chattanooga, and man, without Peggy, I don't know that she really was a key component to making it happen, because we talked quite a bit on telephone, and kept our scheduling and everything, and she got us paid on time, and everything worked real smooth. That was really important because I had to pay my workers, and that just really made things go good, and that made us feel good about the whole deal.
Yeah. Takes a lot of worry away when you know you're not having to renegotiate every turn. Let you just be artists and know that you've got a foundation to create off of. Well, it obviously worked out.
And the community, anytime we brought a crew up, we always would have a place to stay. Somebody would open their doors for us and feed us. And Marilyn Harrison, we stayed out there with her, and in one of her spaces, and it was always just nice. We didn't have to worry about the other part. We got to concentrate on the task at hand, and then we'd have a place to crash, and because it was travel and work and so there's plenty of obstacles just in that front to overcome, and we always had some of the best memories. The bar was set high right there in Chattanooga, so I do appreciate the way you guys took care of us.
Also, during the construction of the passage there, even the construction workers would help us out.
Yeah.
Some of the construction workers would use their cranes to help us load and unload. And it wasn't their responsibility, so they just chimed right in and helped us get all the equipment down where we needed it. It's just like a big family.
Well, it kind of speaks to the name of your team, right? You want to tell us Gadoogie means come together, right? Ish.
Correct.
Well, I got one thing to add. That's part of public art too. Is that once people start to be captivated by the art, that's the power of art, and those areas start to become transformed, and people start to have more feelings and positive. That's why we do this too, is because public art. I really found once I started getting into public art through the Chattanooga opportunity, that's whenever I kind of fell in love with the idea that you didn't have to be pre-exposed to appreciate art no more. You started to be an opportunity to be exposed to art. It was free to anybody that wanted to come by and appreciate it. So that's where they really, became a mission too, right there. That became a mission in itself. Once I started to see how the public interacted with the place and how public art can transform a space, that just became such a neat nuance of what we do as artists, and I really fell in love with that idea.
Well, one last thing I'll tell you. One time I was down there late at night, and the skateboarder guys were down there, the board rats.
Yeah.
So they were down there, and I went up to them and I asked them, I said, hey, man, they were looking at the work and enjoying it. And I asked them, I said, hey, I did this. And they said, could you guys watch out for it at night and take care of it? And if you see anybody messing around, could you run them off and stuff? And they said, sure, we'll watch it for you. That was cool. That was really good. Young people.
They probably still tell that story.
They probably do.
Yeah, it was good.
We met the folks who did this. That I did have a question. This is a personal question, not one that's come in on the chat. On the chat, it's just more kudos and congratulations and people raving about the wonderful work that you did. But I did want to ask you about understanding that people are going to arrive at the installation with their own ideas, or maybe expecting one thing and seeing another, and sort of this confrontation between the celebration of Cherokee culture versus, taking a moment to acknowledge and honor sort of what Ann was talking about in the beginning, how we can use these experiences to not shy away from the history, but maybe tell it in a different way. But if I know that there might be some folks who would think, oh, somebody's skateboarding on this, this is a sacred space. So can you talk a little bit about that and how people might approach the work differently?
Who, me?
Anyone?
Well, that's just the feeling that now has transformed that area. That's our hope. You know, our intent was to bring back some positiveness to there. Obviously, those guys, you know, hopefully weren't tearing anything up, and they didn't seem to be. So they were just there, and they enjoy, you know. So they have a skateboard in their hand, but they enjoy that space, and so that brought life and energy and everything, brought it back to that area, and that's what we try to do. You know, hopefully you don't have too much problem with people running through there with a skateboard, but you know, if that's the idea, with your art, you know, once you create something, we always get asked the question, oh, well, what if this happens, or what if this happens, and we have to believe that what we created has its own, you know, it's kind of like you nurture that art piece for a while, and then once, at some point, you got to let it send it on its journey. And whenever it goes onto its own, it kind of, you know, hopefully you put enough spirit into that thing that once it goes, it starts to protect itself, and people appreciate the amount of spirit that you put into it, and then it's special, and so then it transforms the space through giving back to the area, and that's the beauty of the whole public art schematic.
I love it.
Thank you.
Well said, Demas.
Yeah.
Well, also, you know, through history, of course, we all know, or most people know, that's where the Trail of Tears actually began, right there at that point. And yes, it might be a sacred place to the Cherokee, but also the passage was built to be a hands-on project where people can touch, feel, and emotionally hands-on. And I think it's to be a fun place with some significance to the history. And once you come to that point down to that area, yeah, is a meaningful place to the Cherokee, where our people were moved to here in Oklahoma, or Indian Territory at the time. But to look back and to go back, and when we had our initial contacts at that time, yeah, there was some sorrow there for us, but now it's a happy place for people to look with, you know, to have feelings, and the feelings come from each individual that visit the place. And like Bill said, the skateboarders, if there was anything going to happen, it happened by now. It's lasted for 15 years. I've made a couple of trips back there. We made a couple of trips back there, and the designs, we looked at the ceramic work, we looked at stainless steel, and it's just about like it was. We had to go back one time to take it down, but because of the flood, but we went back to reinstall, but it all looked the same as we first initially put it up. But it's lasted and tested time, you know, so it's an individual feeling. My niece traveled there last year, and she was overcome by it, and she'd posted on Facebook. She was crying because the feelings she got from it. So there's a lot of meaning there, and I'm happy to say I was a part of it. And each member here, of course, we've lost Robbie. Robbie is no longer with us, but and Boss Cummings, who was our the one that did the blessing there, he's gone. And the goat, he's gone. And so, you know, there's some meaning there for us individually and as a team. But for people to come down there and visit the passage, and I think it's an individual thing for them.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. We had someone ask how they can find more of your artwork. Do you have a website you want to send folks to?
Well, we do have a website. It's bdglassstudio.com.
BD like Bill Demas. BD.
bdglassstudio.com.
Great. Thank you.
Well,
anything else that y'all want to get out of them?
you guys, anything you
Always
haven't
learn
said
more
yet?
from you.
Is this where we get a walkout?
You can, but you
No,
know,
I'm kidding.
just know that, you know, some of the, you know, what a wonderful discussion. Please thank the artists for sharing their culture with all of us here in Chattanooga. Thank you for an inspirational meeting. I live walking distance from the Passage and love every chance I get to visit and enjoy it. It is beautiful, very special place. So just know that this talk has meant a lot to the folks who were in attendance, which was over 100, by the way, and many more that are going to see the recording as we stream it. So we're very much appreciative of your time, and to our panelists, our moderators, our facilitators, and everyone.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Enjoyed it. Thank you so much. So good to
Thank
see
you
you
all.
guys.
Good, nice meeting you, and good seeing Mary and Ann.
Yep.
Same here. Miss you.
Yeah, miss you.
Same here.
Take care.
Take care.
Later.
Okay.
Okay.
All right, guys, we're not live anymore. We can, you know, we can talk freely now.
Yeah.